The diplomatic shuttle descended through purple clouds that surrounded the Volthara homeworld. Kang Tae-min watched through the viewport as massive crystalline cities came into view. He had seen many alien worlds during his 5 years as a security chief, but nothing quite like this. The buildings seemed to grow from the ground itself, glittering in the light of 3 distant suns. Nervous? Asked Commander Yoon Dae-ho from the seat beside him. Tae-min shook his head. Just alert. The Velthara don't exactly have a reputation for loving humans. They don't love anyone, Dae-ho replied with a slight smile. That's why this trade agreement is so important. If we can get them to work with us, other species will follow. The shuttle landed in a courtyard surrounded by guards. Each Velthar soldier stood at least 7 feet tall, their skin covered in natural crystalline plates that caught the light. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. Tae-min counted 12 guards, noted the exit points, and calculated response times out of pure habit. Ambassador Park Ji-woo led the human delegation into the palace. The building's interior was even more impressive than the outside. Walls seemed to pulse with inner light. Water flowed upward in defiance of gravity. Velthar nobles walked past, barely glancing at the humans. They think we're primitive, whispered Lady Hai-jin, the cultural attach. To them, we're children playing at galactic politics. Let them think that, Tae-min said quietly. Underestimation is sometimes an advantage. The throne room was vast. At its center sat Emperor Velthar, an ancient being whose crystalline armor had grown so thick over centuries that he seemed carved from diamond. Beside him stood a younger Velthara, female, with armor that shimmered like opals. Princess Liravel. Tae-min had studied her file. She was a warrior, a strategist, and the Empire's heir. The ambassador began his prepared speech about trade routes and mutual benefits. Tae-min stood at attention, scanning for threats. His job wasn't politics. His job was keeping the ambassador alive. The emperor listened with obvious boredom. When the ambassador finished, there was silence. Then Princess Liravel spoke. A question for your delegation, Ambassador Park. Not of trade, but of thought. The ambassador nodded. Uncertain. The princess gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed a complex 3-dimensional puzzle, dozens of geometric shapes interlocking in seemingly impossible ways. This is the Maze of Vel. Our strategists use it to train their minds. The goal is to find the pattern that unlocks all pieces simultaneously. Our best minds solve it in 6 hours. Can any of your people attempt it? It was a test, Tae-min realized. A way to humiliate the humans before negotiations even began. The ambassador looked at his team. The science officer stepped forward, studying the puzzle with a frown. Minutes passed. The Velthara nobles began to whisper among themselves, some laughing quietly. Tae-min stared at the display. He wasn't a scientist or a strategist. He was a soldier. But he had learned long ago that complex problems sometimes had simple solutions. The shapes looked random, but there was something familiar about them. He had seen this before, or something like it. May I try? He asked. The ambassador looked surprised, but nodded. Tae-min approached the display. He didn't study the shapes themselves. Instead, he looked at the empty spaces between them. There, a pattern in the negative space. The Velthara designed their puzzles to confuse the eye, to make you focus on what was present instead of what was absent. He reached out and touched 3 points in the empty spaces. Not the shapes themselves. The entire display chimed and collapsed into a single, perfect sphere. Silence filled the throne room. 43 seconds, Princess Liravel said, her voice carrying clear surprise. You didn't solve the puzzle. You saw through it entirely. Tae-min bowed slightly. The shapes were a distraction. The real pattern was in the space they created. The princess stood, descending the steps from her throne. She moved like a predator, all controlled grace. She stopped directly in front of Taemin, studying him with eyes that held flecks of violet light. "What is your name, human?" "Kang Taemin, Your Highness." "Security chief." "A warrior, then." "Not a scholar. I've been both when necessary." Something changed in the princess's expression. Interest, perhaps, or calculation. She turned to address the entire court, her voice ringing out clearly. "I, Princess Lurval, heir to the Veltura throne, hereby declare my interest in this human. According to our ancient customs, I offer him a challenge." The ambassador's face went pale. Haijin grabbed Taemin's arm, her fingers digging in hard. Daeho stepped forward, but the princess raised a hand. "Defeat my champion in 3 trials, and I shall be yours," the princess declared. "Succeed, and our peoples will forge an alliance beyond mere trade. Your species will have the full backing of the Velthura Empire." "And if he fails?" the ambassador asked, his voice barely steady. "Then your delegation will leave immediately, and we will never speak of trade again. Your species will remain minor and unimportant in galactic affairs." Taemin felt every eye in the room on him. This wasn't about romance or attraction. This was politics at its most dangerous. The princess was testing whether humans could stand as equals. Refusal would be an insult that could never be forgiven. Acceptance meant risking everything on 3 unknown trials. "Who is your champion?" Taemin asked. A door opened at the far end of the throne room. A Velthura warrior entered, and Taemin understood immediately why the room had gone silent. The warrior stood 9 feet tall, with 4 arms and armor so thick it seemed grown into his very bones. Scars covered every visible surface. This was a killer, plain and simple. "Korvath the Unbroken," the princess said. "He has defended my honor in 63 challenges. 17 of those challenges died. The rest wished they had. The trials will test strength, cunning, and heart," the emperor added, speaking for the first time. "They begin in 7 days. Do you accept, human?" Taemin looked at his ambassador, who gave the smallest of nods. The man's career, possibly his life, depended on Taemin's answer. He looked at Daeho, who stood rigid, clearly wanting to object, but knowing he couldn't. He looked back at the princess. She watched him with those strange violet eyes, and he realized something. She wanted him to accept. This wasn't cruelty. This was opportunity. She had chosen this path deliberately. "I accept," Taemin said clearly. The princess smiled. It was not a kind smile, but it was genuine. "Then let the preparations begin. 7 days, human. Learn what it means to face a Velthura warrior." As the delegation was escorted out, Haijin pulled Taemin aside. "Do you know what you've done? Korvath has never lost. Never." "I know," Taemin said. "But I also know something else." The princess could have chosen any human to challenge. She chose the one who saw through her puzzle. "That means something. It means you're going to die," Haijin said bluntly. Taemin looked back at the throne room, where the princess still stood, watching him leave. Maybe, or maybe she's looking for someone who thinks differently. Either way, we're committed now. 7 days. 3 trials. 1 chance to prove that humans belonged among the stars. The arena of broken bones earned its name honestly. Taemin stood at the edge of the massive Colosseum, looking down at the fighting pit below. The ground was stained dark with blood from centuries of combat. Bones had been pressed into the walls as decoration, creating a mosaic of death. "Cheerful place," Daeho muttered beside him. They had spent the last 7 days preparing. Daeho had trained Taemin every day, pushing him to his limits and beyond. Haijin had researched every scrap of information about Velthura combat trials. What they learned wasn't encouraging. "The rules are simple," Hyjin explained again, reviewing her notes one final time. First one to make their opponent unable to continue wins. There are no weapons allowed, but the arena itself is considered fair game. You can use anything you find there. And Korvath has 4 arms, superior strength, and natural armor, Taemin added. Anything else? Yes, Hyjin said quietly. Velthra heal faster than humans. Much faster. Even if you hurt him, he'll recover during the fight. You won't. Taemin nodded. He had studied videos of Korvath as previous fights. The champion didn't just win. He dominated. He broke his opponents physically and mentally. But Taemin had also noticed something. Korvath fought the same way every time. He relied on his natural advantages. He had never faced anyone who fought dirty. Time to go, Daeho said, clasping Taemin's shoulder. Remember what I taught you. Speed over strength. Distance over power. And most importantly, never fight fair when the stakes are this high. Taemin finished. The arena floor was hot under Taemin's feet as he entered. Thousands of Velthra filled the seats above, their crystalline bodies catching the light and creating a dazzling, disorienting effect. In the royal box, Princess Liravel sat beside her father. She wore armor today, Taemin noticed. A warrior observing warriors. Korvath entered from the opposite side. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Each of his forearms ended in hands that could crush stone. His eyes held no emotion, no anger or excitement. Just cold purpose. A Velthra official stepped into the center of the arena. The first trial begins now. Combat continues until one combatant cannot or will not continue. There are no other rules. The official retreated quickly. Korvath didn't waste time. He charged across the arena with surprising speed for something his size. Taemin dove to the side, rolling and coming up running. He couldn't trade blows with this creature. That was suicide. The champion's fist cratered the ground where Taemin had been standing. Tae-Min had studied the arena carefully during the past week. He had noticed things the Velthra hadn't thought to hide. Support columns that looked solid but had hairline cracks. Floor sections that rang hollow when struck. The Velthra built for show, not necessarily for safety. He ran, letting Korvath chase him. The champion was fast, but Taemin was faster over short distances. He led the warrior toward the eastern wall, where he had noticed one of the support columns showed signs of stress. Running is not strength, human. Korvath's voice boomed across the arena. I'm not running, Taemin called back. I'm positioning. He stopped suddenly, turning to face the champion. Korvath grinned, all 4 arms spreading wide as he charged. At the last second, Taemin dropped and rolled between the warrior's legs. Korvath's momentum carried him forward, straight into the damaged column. The column cracked but held. Korvath turned, shaking off the impact that would have killed a human. Tae-Min had hoped for more, but he adapted. He moved again, this time toward a section of floor he had identified. The ground here was older, the stones less stable. He needed Korvath angry, needed him to stop thinking tactically. Your record says 63 challenges, Taemin called out. How many of those actually fought back? Korvath's eyes narrowed. Good. Anger. You mock me, human? I'm just saying, it's easy to be undefeated when everyone fights you the same way. Has anyone ever actually made you think? Korvath roared and charged again. This time, all 4 arms came up, ready to grab Taemin and tear him apart. Taemin waited, counting seconds, watching the distance close. At the last possible moment, he dropped flat. Korvath couldn't stop his momentum. He flew over Taemin and crashed into the wall behind him. The impact shook the entire arena. When the champion rose, there was actual anger in his eyes now. No more cold calculation. That was what Taemin needed. They circled each other. Taemin's breathing was already labored. He was running on pure adrenaline now. Every muscle screamed. Korvath looked barely winded. The champion feinted left, then struck right with two arms while the other two came from above. It was a perfect attack, one that had probably ended dozens of fights. But Taemin had seen it in the videos. He went low and forward, inside Korvath's reach where those long arms couldn't generate power. He struck at the champion's knee, not with his fist but with his elbow, driving it into the joint with everything he had. Korvath grunted, the first sound of pain Taemin had heard from him. The champion brought down two arms like hammers. Taemin barely rolled away. One fist clipped his shoulder, and he felt something crack. Pain exploded through his body, but he couldn't stop. Stopping meant dying. He ran again, this time toward the center of the arena, the hollow section he had identified. His shoulder was useless now, his right arm hanging limp. Korvath followed, moving more carefully now, favoring one leg slightly. "You cannot win, human. You cannot hurt me enough." "Don't need to hurt you," Taemin gasped. "Just need to stop you." He reached the hollow section and stopped, turning to face Korvath. The champion approached slowly, all four arms ready. He had learned not to charge blindly. "Strength isn't just muscle," Taemin said. "It's using what you have against what your enemy expects." He jumped straight up, as high as his exhausted legs could manage. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Korvath reacted on instinct, reaching up with all four arms to grab him. Taemin twisted in midair and came down with both feet aimed at a single point on the hollow ground. His heel struck the weak spot he had identified, and physics did the rest. The floor collapsed. Korvath, off balance from reaching upward, fell through the hole. His massive weight did what Taemin's strikes could never do. The champion crashed down into the maintenance tunnels below the arena, taking a dozen floor stones with him. Taemin landed hard on the edge of the hole, his broken shoulder screaming. He looked down into the darkness. For a moment, there was only dust and silence. Then Korvath's hand appeared, grabbing the edge. The champion was climbing back up. Taemin had one chance. He grabbed the largest piece of rubble he could lift with his good arm and brought it down on Korvath's hand. Once, twice, 3 times. The champion's fingers loosened. He fell back into the darkness. This time, he didn't immediately try to climb back up. Taemin stood at the edge of the hole, swaying. The arena was completely silent. He couldn't hear Korvath moving below. After what felt like an eternity, the official approached cautiously and looked down into the hole. "The champion is unconscious," the official announced. "The human wins." The silence broke into chaos. Half the crowd roared in outrage. The other half seemed too shocked to make any sound at all. Taemin turned toward the royal box. Princess Lyraville was standing, her expression unreadable. Then she began to clap. Slowly at first, then with clear approval. Her father, the emperor, stood as well. "The trial is complete." The human fought with cunning and used his environment as a weapon. This is strength of a different kind. The result stands. Taemin collapsed to his knees. Taeho and Haijin rushed onto the arena floor, supporting him. "You crazy bastard," Taeho said, but he was smiling. "You actually did it." "One down," Taemin managed to say through the pain. 2 to go. As they helped him toward the medical station, he saw Princess Lyraville descending from the royal box. She approached the hole where Korvath had fallen and spoke to the warriors pulling him out. Then she looked at Taemin across the arena. Their eyes met. She nodded once. A gesture of respect. Taemin nodded back, then let his friends carry him away. He had won the first trial, but he had also learned something important. The princess wasn't testing whether he could beat Korvath. With strength, she was testing whether he could win by thinking differently. and he had just proven he could. The doctors had worked on Taemin's shoulder for 6 hours. Velthra medical technology was impressive, but it couldn't completely heal a human in just 5 days. His shoulder still ached, the movement limited. It would have to be enough. The labyrinth of mirrors stood at the edge of the Imperial Palace grounds. From outside, it looked like a massive crystalline dome that reflected the sky in 1,000 fractured images. Inside, Hyjin had explained, was amazed that it had broken the minds of countless warriors over the centuries. The labyrinth shifts, she had told him during their preparation. The walls move based on some pattern no one has fully understood. There are traps, creatures bred specifically for the maze, and illusions designed to drive you insane. The goal is simple. Reach the center before your opponent. What's at the center? Taemin had asked. A crystal pillar. First person to touch it wins. Now, standing at the entrance, Taemin understood why this trial was called a test of cunning. Brute force wouldn't help here. Only intelligence and adaptability would matter. Korvath stood at the second entrance, 50 meters away. The champion's leg had healed completely, and his pride was clearly wounded. He stared at Taemin with undisguised hatred. The warrior who had never lost now faced the possibility of losing twice. Princess Laravel stood between the two entrances. The second trial begins when both competitors enter simultaneously. There are no rules inside the labyrinth except this. Reach the center first. Whatever you encounter, however you survive, is acceptable. Do you both understand? Taemin nodded. Korvath grunted his agreement. Then begin. Taemin stepped into the labyrinth. Immediately, the world shifted. The entrance sealed behind him with a sound like breaking glass. He stood in a corridor of mirrors, each reflecting his image 1,000 times. Above, below, to all sides, his own face stared back at him. He closed his eyes and focused on other senses. Sound, the faint hum of energy running through the walls. Air movement. A slight breeze from his left. He followed it, keeping one hand on the mirror surface to maintain orientation. The corridor split into 3 paths. Taemin paused, studying each reflection carefully. 2 of the paths showed his reflection normally. The third showed his reflection slightly delayed, moving a fraction of a second after he did dot illusion. That path wasn't real. He took the middle path, the one that looked least inviting. In his experience, the obvious choice was usually the trap. The maze was designed for Veltura, Taemin reminded himself. Their senses were different from humans. They could see in spectrums humans couldn't, hear frequencies beyond human range. But that meant their vulnerabilities were different too. A sound echoed through the corridor. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Korvath was moving fast, probably using his superior strength to break through walls when the path didn't suit him. Taemin couldn't match that approach. He had to be smarter. The corridor opened into a larger chamber filled with floating mirror fragments. They rotated slowly, creating a dizzying pattern of reflected light. Taemin's first instinct was to find a path through them, but then he noticed something. The fragments weren't random. They formed a pattern if viewed from the right angle. He climbed onto a ledge along the wall, getting higher. From this vantage point, he could see that the mirror fragments created arrows in their reflection, pointing toward 3 different exits. 2 arrows pointed to obvious exits. The third, faintest arrow pointed to what looked like a solid wall. Taemin trusted his instinct. He climbed down and approached the solid wall. Running his hand along the surface, he found a seam. He pushed, and the wall swung inward, revealing a narrow passage. The passage was dark and tight, barely wide enough for his shoulders. He had to turn sideways to move through it. This definitely wasn't designed for Korvath's bulk. Good. Something hissed in the darkness ahead. Taemin froze. His eyes adjusted slowly to the dimness. Crystalline serpents, their bodies transparent except for the venom sacs glowing inside them. 3 of them, each as thick as his arm and at least 10 feet long. Jean had warned him about these. Their venom caused paralysis in most species, including humans. One bite would end the trial. The serpents couldn't see well in the dark, she had said. They hunted by sensing body heat and movement. Taemin had an idea. He slowly, carefully removed his jacket. The serpents' heads tracked toward him, tongues flickering. He threw the jacket to his left. The serpents struck at it immediately, drawn by the movement. While they were distracted, Taemin ran right, keeping his steps as light as possible. He felt one serpent's body slide across his boot, but he didn't stop. He emerged into another chamber, this one with a floor made of mirror panels. Some panels looked solid. Others showed cracks. Taemin tested the first panel with his foot. It held. He stepped out carefully. The panel shattered, and he barely caught himself on the edge, pulling himself back to solid ground. His shoulders screamed in pain. Not weight-based traps then. Something else. He looked more carefully at the reflections. Some panels showed his reflection clearly. Others showed it distorted or darkened. Those were the false ones. He began to move across the floor, stepping only on panels that showed true reflections. It was slow work, and he could hear sounds of destruction from elsewhere in the maze. Korvath was getting closer to the center. Tae-Min reached the far side of the chamber and found another choice of paths. This time, there were 5 corridors, each identical. He couldn't see any difference between them. Then he noticed the air movement again. 4 corridors had still air. One had a slight breeze, so faint he almost missed it. He followed the breeze. The corridor twisted and turned, sometimes doubling back on itself. Taemin began to suspect it was leading him in circles. But then he emerged into the largest chamber yet, the center of the labyrinth. A crystal pillar rose from the floor, glowing with inner light. But between Taemin and the pillar was a chasm, at least 30 feet across. On the far side of the chasm, another entrance opened, and Korvath emerged. The champion saw the pillar and saw Taemin at the same moment. His expression twisted into fury. "You should not be here, human." "And yet I am," Taemin called back. Korvath looked at the chasm and laughed. "This trial is mine. Watch and learn what true Voltura strength means." The champion backed up, then ran and leaped. His powerful legs launched him across the chasm easily. He landed on the other side, near the pillar, and turned to look at Taemin with contempt. "You cannot make this jump, human. You are too weak, too small. Admit defeat, and I will help you cross." Taemin studied the situation. Korvath was right. He couldn't make that jump, especially with his injured shoulder. A normal human would be stuck, but Taemin wasn't trying to be normal. He looked up at the chamber's ceiling. The mirror panels above were arranged in a pattern, supported by a framework of crystal beams. The beams looked decorative, but they were structural. They had to be to support the weight of the mirrors. "I don't need to jump," Taemin said. He began to climb the wall, using small protrusions in the mirror surface as handholds. His shoulder protested every movement, but he pushed through the pain. He reached the framework of beams above and began to work his way across, hand over hand, like moving across monkey bars. Korvath watched in disbelief. "That is not strength. That is cowardice." "It's problem-solving," Taemin grunted. Focused on not falling, he reached the point above the pillar and carefully lowered himself down, dropping the last few feet and landing beside the crystal column. His hand touched the pillar the same moment Korvath reached for it. The pillar flared with bright light. "Both competitors have reached the center," a voice announced from everywhere and nowhere. However, the human arrived first by 3 seconds. "The second trial goes to Kang Taemin." Korvath's roar of frustration shook the chamber. He turned on Taemin, all four arms raised. Taemin stepped back, ready to defend himself, but the champion stopped. Slowly, with visible effort, Korvath lowered his arms. "You do not fight as we do," the champion said quietly. "Every time, you find another way. Every time, I think I understand, and then you surprise me again." "That's the point," Taemin said. "If I fought your way, I'd lose. So I fight my way." Korvath studied him for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he extended one of his hands. "The third trial will be different, human. It will test what is inside you, not outside. We will see what you are truly made of." Taemin shook the offered hand, feeling the incredible strength in that grip. The walls of the labyrinth began to shift, creating a path back to the entrance. As they walked out together, Taemin saw Princess Laravel waiting at the entrance. She looked pleased. "2 victories," she said. "You continue to exceed expectations, Kang Taemin. What's the third trial?" he asked directly. Her smile faded. "The hardest one. The trial of heart. It breaks most to attempt it. You have 3 days to prepare. Can you tell me what to expect?" "No," she said softly, "because I don't know what you will face. The trial shows each person their own truth. And truth, human, is often more painful than any physical wound." The Void Chamber was the oldest part of the Imperial Palace. Unlike the rest of the crystalline architecture, this chamber was made of dark stone that seemed to absorb light. 2 identical pods stood in the center of the room, their surfaces smooth and black as deep space. "Neural interface technology," Hyjin explained, her voice echoing in the empty chamber. "It connects directly to your brain and creates a simulation based on your subconscious. The Velthara use it to test their warriors' mental strength." "What happens if you fail?" Taemin asked. "Some come out changed. Some don't come out at all, mentally speaking. Their bodies survive, but their minds break." Taemin had spent the last 3 days trying to prepare. But how do you prepare for something that reads your own mind? He had meditated, practiced mental exercises, and talked with Diho about handling psychological stress. Nothing felt like enough. That the day of the trial arrived too quickly. Princess Laravel met him outside the Void Chamber. She wore no armor today, just simple robes that made her look younger, more vulnerable. "I must tell you something before you enter," she said quietly, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "This trial was not designed to find me a mate. It was designed centuries ago to test our warriors before they led armies into battle. Many die. More wish they had died. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth. I chose you for these trials because I needed someone who thought differently. Someone who could show my people that there are other kinds of strength. But I did not fully consider the cost to you." She looked genuinely troubled. "I am sorry for that." Taemin considered her words. "If I refuse now, then the trials end. Your people leave. We forget this happened. And your message to your people? That different thinking has value." She looked away. "Lost. They will say I was foolish to think a human could complete the trials. Everything I hope to prove will be dismissed." Taemin made his decision. "Then I'll see it through. But I want to know something. Why does this matter so much to you? Really?" Princess Laravel was quiet for a long moment. "Because I am tired of our empire stagnating. We have been the same for 1,000 years. Strong, yes. Proud, yes. But unchanging. And in this galaxy, things that do not change eventually die. I have seen this truth, but my people refuse to see it. I needed proof that other ways could work. That strength comes in forms we don't recognize." She met his eyes. "You have already given me that proof twice. But the trial must be completed. Those are the rules even I cannot break. Then let's finish it, Taemin said. They entered the void chamber together. Korvath was already there, standing beside one of the pods. The champion looked different than before. Nervous, perhaps. This trial clearly worried even him. The Emperor himself presided over this trial. The final test. Each of you will enter a pod. Inside, you will face yourself. Your fears, your failures, your truths. At the center of your personal trial is the truth stone. First to claim it wins. First to quit loses. And if your mind breaks, he left a sentence unfinished. There is no shame in refusing this trial, the Emperor added, looking Taemin. Many of our greatest warriors have declined it. I accept, Taemin said. As do I, Korvath rumbled. Taemin climbed into his pod. The interior was surprisingly comfortable, like resting in warm water. A technician attached sensors to his temples. Once it begins, remember this, Princess Liravel said, leaning close to his pod. What you see is real to your mind, but it is not reality. Hold on to that distinction. It may save you. The pod closed. Darkness surrounded him. Then light. Taemin opened his eyes and immediately wished he hadn't. He was back on Kepler 442b, the colony planet where his first command had gone so terribly wrong. He stood in the ruins of the outpost, and he could smell the smoke, feel the heat of burning buildings. No, he whispered. Not this. Please, not this. But the simulation didn't care about his wishes. Time moved forward, and he lived through it again. 3 years ago, he had been a lieutenant leading a small security team protecting a mining operation. The planet was supposed to be uninhabited. It wasn't. The indigenous species was peaceful until the mining disturbed their sacred sites. Then they had attacked. Taemin heard the screams now, just as he had heard them then. His team, 12 people under his command. He watched himself make the same decisions again, ordering his team to defensive positions that he knew, now, were wrong. Sending them into the tunnels where they would be trapped. Please, he begged the empty air. Let me change it. Let me save them. But he couldn't. This was memory, not reality. He watched his team die, one by one. Kim Yuna, shot through the chest while protecting civilians. Lee Tae-yang buried in a tunnel collapse. Park Soo-jin, dying in Taemin's arms while he promised help that came too late. 12 deaths. All his fault for making the wrong calls. The scene shifted. Now he stood before a military tribunal. They had cleared him of wrongdoing. Impossible situation, they had said. No one could have known. But Taemin had known. He had seen signs and ignored them. He had been too confident in his training, too sure that his experience was enough. The tribunal faded, and Taemin found himself in darkness again, alone with his guilt. This is the trial? He called out. To relive my worst failure? No, a voice answered. It was his own voice. A figure stepped from the shadows, identical to him in every way. The trial is to accept it. I can't, Taemin said. I killed them. My mistakes, my arrogance, my failure. Yes, his double agreed. All true. And I should have died with them? Also true, perhaps. But you didn't. You lived. And since then, you have carried their deaths like armor, using guilt as your shield. Do you think that honors them? Taemin felt anger rising. What else should I do? Forget them? Accept them, his double said. Accept that you failed. Accept that you learned. Accept that you became better because of it. Accept that carrying this guilt doesn't bring them back, but it does make you less effective at protecting the people who are still alive. In the distance, light appeared. The truth stone, glowing with soft radiance. To reach that, his double said, you must forgive yourself. Not forget. Not excuse. Forgive. Can you do that? Taemin thought of his team. 12 faces he saw every time he closed his eyes. 12 names he whispered every morning. He had made them into ghosts that haunted him, but they had been people. Living, laughing people who had trusted him. They would not want this, he said slowly. They would not want me to destroy myself with guilt. No, his double agreed. They would want you to learn, to be better, to protect others so their deaths meant something. Taemin took a step toward the light. I failed them. I was arrogant and inexperienced, and I made mistakes that cost lives. Another step. I cannot change the past. I cannot bring them back. Another. But I can honor them by being better, by using what I learned to save others. Another. I can forgive myself for being imperfect while still remembering the price of those imperfections. He reached the truth stone. It was warm under his hand, pulsing like a heartbeat. I forgive you, his double said. And Taemin realized he was saying it to himself. The world dissolved. Tae-Min woke in the pod, gasping for air. Tears streamed down his face. The sensors were removed, and hands helped him sit up. The chamber swam into focus. Princess Liravel stood beside his pod, her expression concerned. How long? Taemin asked, his voice rough. 6 hours, she said softly. Korvath emerged 3 hours ago. He did not reach his truth stone. You won the moment you touched yours. Taemin looked across the chamber. Korvath sat against the wall, staring at nothing. The champion looked smaller somehow, defeated not by strength or cunning, but by his own heart. What did he face? Taemin asked. The same thing all Velthora warriors face in that trial, the princess said. The fear that we are not strong enough, that our strength is all we are. Without it, we are nothing. She looked sad. Korvath could not accept weakness in himself, could not forgive himself for being less than perfect. So he fled the trial rather than face that truth. Taemin stood on shaky legs. He walked to Korvath and sat beside the warrior. I failed, Korvath said quietly. I have never failed before. Failure isn't the end, Taemin said. It's just information. It tells you where you need to grow. You do not understand. I am a warrior. I am strength. If I am not strong, I am nothing. You're wrong, Taemin said firmly. You're strong and other things. You're intelligent enough to change tactics. You're honorable enough to shake my hand. You're brave enough to enter that trial at all. Strength is just one piece of who you are. Korvath looked at him, and for the first time, Taemin saw uncertainty in those alien eyes. How do you bear it? The champion asked. Knowing you failed? Knowing you are imperfect? By accepting it, Taemin said. And by trying to be better tomorrow than I was today. The Emperor's voice rang out. The trials are complete. Kang Taemin has passed all 3 tests. The challenge is fulfilled. But Taemin barely heard it. He was too busy helping Korvath to his feet, supporting a warrior who had just learned that admitting weakness could be its own kind of strength. The palace was quiet in the hours before dawn. Taemin stood on a balcony overlooking the Crystal City, unable to sleep. He had completed the trials, proven himself according to Velthora law. Tomorrow would be the formal announcement of alliance between their peoples. Except something felt wrong. The palace was too quiet. Where were the usual patrols? Why had he seen the same guard pass his room 3 times in the last hour? Years of military training had given Taemin instincts he trusted. Those instincts were screaming now. He moved quickly, pulling on his clothes and heading toward the human delegation's quarters. The corridors were dimly lit, empty. He found Deho already awake, checking his weapons. You feel it too? Deho asked without looking up. Something's wrong. Where's the ambassador? Safe room. Hygiene is with him. I was about to come get you. A sound echoed through the palace. An explosion, distant but unmistakable. Then another. Alarms began to blare. What's happening? Taemin demanded. A Velthra guard ran past, then doubled back. It was one of the princess's personal guards, wounded and bleeding. Coup, she gasped. High General Vexter. He's taken the military wing. They're coming for the princes and the emperor. Why? Taemin asked, helping her sit. You, the Alliance. Vexter and the conservative nobles believe humans will weaken the empire. They want the princess dead and the emperor to reject the alliance under duress. Another explosion, closer now. Taemin's mind raced. Where is the princess? Throne room. She and her father barricaded themselves there with loyal guards, but Vexter has numbers. Deho checked his weapons. We have 6 security personnel total. Maybe 15 loyal Velthra guards. Against how many? 300 soldiers at least, the guard said. Maybe more. We need to evacuate, Deho said. Get our people to the shuttles and leave the princess to die? Taemin shook his head. That's not an option. Tae-men, we can't fight an army. We don't fight the army. We fight smart. Taemin turned to the wounded guard. The palace layout. What's the fastest route to the throne room? The main corridors are blocked. You'd have to go through the servant passages, but they're maze-like. I've gotten good at mazes lately, Taemin said grimly. Get our people to safety. I'm going for the princess. Deho grabbed his arm. You're not going alone. Before they could argue further, Korvath appeared from a side passage. The champion wore full battle armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. Behind him were a dozen Velthra warriors. You go to save the princess, Korvath stated. It wasn't a question. Yes. Then you go with allies. Vexter dishonors us all with this coup. He and I have disagreed before, but this is treason. Why are you helping me? Taemin asked. Korvath's expression was unreadable. Because you taught me something in the trials. You showed me that there are many kinds of strength. You won with tactics, with thinking, with accepting your own flaws. The princess chose well when she challenged you. Vexter is wrong. Humans do not weaken us. They show us new ways to be strong. Taemin clasped the warrior's arm. Then let's go save our princess. They moved through the servant passages quickly. Taemin led, with Korvath beside him and the combined force of human and Velthra soldiers behind. They could hear fighting throughout the palace, the sounds of Vexter's coup spreading. They emerged near the throne room to find it under siege. Vexter had at least 100 soldiers battering at the doors. The High General himself stood at the rear, directing the assault. He was massive, even by Velthra standards, his crystalline armor black as night. We're outnumbered 10-1, Deho observed quietly. Then we even the odds, Taemin said. Korvath, can your people hold the left flank if we give you an opening? Easily. Deho, take our security team right. Suppressing fire only. I need Vexter's attention on me. What are you planning? Deho asked suspiciously. Something stupid, Taemin admitted. But it might work. Before anyone could stop him, Taemin stepped into the open corridor and shouted, I, General Vexter. I challenge you to single combat. The fighting paused. Every head turned toward the human standing alone in the corridor. Vexter laughed, a sound like grinding stone. The human thinks he can defeat me? You barely survived Korvath, and I am twice the warrior he is. Then it should be easy for you, Taemin called back. Or are you afraid? Afraid that if you lose to a human, your entire coup collapses. The taunt hit its mark. Vexthor's expression darkened. You want to die, human? Very well. I accept your challenge. But know this. When you fall, your princess dies next, and your people will be exiled from our space forever. If I win, Taemin countered, you surrender. You and all your forces stand down. Agreed. Not that it matters. The soldiers pulled back, forming a circle. This was sacred to the Velthora, Taemin knew. A challenge given and accepted could not be interrupted. Even the coup forces would honor this. Vexthor entered the circle, and Taemin understood just how outmatched he was. The High General was even larger than Korvath, his armor thicker, his weapons more advanced. This wasn't going to be like the trials. This was real combat against a real warrior who wanted him dead. No tricks will save you this time, human, Vexthor said. No arenas to collapse. No puzzles to solve. Just strength against strength. You're right, Taemin said, and he meant it. But you're making the same mistake everyone makes. What mistake? Thinking strength is all that matters. Vexthor attacked. The High General moved with terrifying speed despite his size. Taemin barely dodged the first strike, rolled under the second, and felt the third graze his ribs. Pain exploded through his side, but he kept moving. He couldn't win with strength. Couldn't outthink his way out of this like the trials. But he had learned something from each trial. Something that came together now. From the first trial. Use the environment. From the second trial. Find a path others don't see. From the third trial. Accept your limitations and work with them. Tae-min stopped trying to fight Vexthor's way. He used his smaller size as an advantage, staying inside the High General's reach where those powerful blows couldn't generate full force. He targeted joints, weak points in the armor, using precision over power. Vexthor grew frustrated, his attacks becoming wilder. Good. Anger made people sloppy. Stand still and fight. Vexthor roared. Why would I do that? Taemin shot back, dodging another strike. He saw his opening. Vexthor had overextended, his weight forward. Taemin didn't try to hurt him. Instead, he swept the High General's forward leg, while simultaneously pushing against his chest. Physics did the rest. Vexthor crashed to the ground. Before he could rise, Taemin was on him, a piece of broken armor pressed against the High General's throat. One push, and it would pierce the vulnerable skin there. Yield, Taemin commanded. Never, Vexthor spat. Kill me or I will kill you the moment you release me. No, said a new voice. Princess Laravel stepped out of the throne room, which had been opened from within. She looked at the scene before her, a human holding the High General at his mercy, surrounded by soldiers on both sides. You have lost, Vexthor, she said clearly. Not just this fight, but your argument. This human has shown mercy where you showed only violence. He offered alliance where you offered only subjugation. He has proven that different does not mean weak. She turned to address all the soldiers present. The trials were never about finding me a mate, though Kang Taemin has more than earned that right. They were about proving to our empire that we must evolve. We must embrace new ideas, new ways of thinking, or we will stagnate and die as a civilization. The Emperor emerged behind her. Vexthor, you and your co-conspirators are stripped of rank and position. You will be imprisoned for treason. As for the rest of you who followed him, you have a choice. Accept the alliance with humanity and the changes it brings, or resign your commissions with honor. Taemin slowly removed the makeshift blade from Vexthor's throat and stepped back. The High General rose, his expression twisted with hatred. This is not over, Vexthor hissed. You may have won today, human, but there are others who think as I do. Then they can learn as you did, Taemin said tiredly. The hard way. Guards came and took Vexthor away. The Ku soldiers, seeing their leader defeated and captured, laid down their weapons. The fighting throughout the palace ceased. Princess Laravel approached Tae Min. "You could have killed him." "Yes. Why didn't you?" "Because killing him would have made him a martyr to his cause. Defeating him and showing mercy proves your point better than his death ever could." She studied him for a long moment, then smiled. "The trials are complete. The alliance is secured. And according to our law, I am yours." Tae Min shook his head. "No, according to your law, we are partners, equals. I didn't win you like a prize. We chose each other." Her smile widened. "You continue to surprise me, Kang Tae Min." "Very well, partners and equals. Will that satisfy you?" "It's a start," he said. Koraval approached, followed by his warriors. "The human speaks truth. We have all learned today. Strength alone is not enough. We must adapt or become irrelevant." The emperor raised his hand for silence. "Let it be known throughout the empire. The alliance between Velthra and humanity is sealed. We enter a new age, one where different kinds of strength are valued equally." As the pronouncement echoed through the palace, Daeho appeared at Tae Min's side.